Gwen had always dreamed of running a bakery. She had loved baking since she was young. Every morning, she would wake up early to bake fresh bread and pastries. Her small bakery was all she had, and it didn't make much money. But she was proud of what she did. It made her happy, even though it was hard to make ends meet. Liam, her childhood friend, owned a little grocery shop in the village. He was always cheerful and loved talking about his big dreams. He often said, "One day my shop will be the biggest in the village." But just like Gwen, Liam didn't have much money to make his dreams come true. He worked long hours, carrying heavy bags of vegetables and other goods on his back. One warm afternoon, as Gwen and Liam sat together under the big tree near the river, they both felt a little frustrated. Gwen had been baking bread all morning, but she couldn't bake enough because her oven was too small. Liam had been carrying heavy bags all day, and he couldn't help but complain. "I wish I could bake more bread," Gwen sighed. "But the oven is too small, and I don't have enough money to buy a bigger one." Liam nodded. "I know exactly what you mean. I need a cart to carry my goods to the market. Right now, I have to carry everything by hand. It's exhausting." Gwen looked at him and suddenly had an idea. "What if we buy a cart together?" she said, her eyes lighting up. "You could use it for your groceries, and I could use it to deliver my bread." Liam's face brightened. "That's a great idea. We could share it. Let's do it." They both agreed to save their money and buy a cart together. For a few months, they shared it. Gwen used it in the mornings to deliver fresh bread, and Liam used it in the afternoons to bring goods back from the market. Their businesses slowly grew, and they were both happy with the arrangement. They worked hard, but they were helping each other out, and that made them feel good. Then one day, things started to change. Liam's uncle, who had been away for many years, came back to the village. He had been traveling and had saved up a small fortune. When Liam heard the news, he was overjoyed. With the money his uncle gave him, Liam was able to make his grocery shop bigger and better. He bought new shelves, stocked his store with fancy goods, and even put in a new sign that made the shop look very impressive. Liam was proud of himself. "Look at my shop now," he said to Gwen one day. "It's looking great. I don't need the cart anymore. I want to sell it and keep my half of the money." Gwen felt a pang of disappointment. She had grown attached to the cart. It was a shared dream, and now it seemed like Liam didn't need it anymore. "But I still need the cart," Gwen said. "Without it, I can't deliver my bread. If you want to sell it, then you should pay me for my half." Liam's face became serious. He crossed his arms and said, "No, I don't want to pay. I want to sell it. Let's go to the village judge. He'll decide who gets the cart." Gwen didn't want to argue, but she agreed to go with him. They walked to the village judge's house, hoping for a fair decision. The village judge was known for making quick decisions, but his judgments were often unfair. When Gwen and Liam explained their situation, the judge didn't seem to care much. "You both own the cart," the judge said with a shrug. "If Liam wants to sell his half, let him cut the cart in two." Gwen gasped. "What? You can't just cut it in half. The cart won't be useful then." But the judge didn't listen. "Well, that's the solution," he said. "If Liam wants his half, he can cut it." Liam nodded, his mind made up. "Fine, I'll cut it. It's my half, after all." Gwen felt her heart break. The cart had been their shared hope. She couldn't believe it would end like this. Liam grabbed a saw and began cutting through the wooden cart. Gwen stood there, helpless, watching as her dream was destroyed. It was as if every piece of wood he cut was a piece of her future slipping away. When Liam finished, the cart was in two pieces, and neither part was useful. Gwen was angry and sad, but she didn't say anything. She walked away, her thoughts racing. How could Liam be so careless? Months passed, but the tension between Gwen and Liam didn't go away. Gwen was still rebuilding her bakery, working harder than ever to make it better. She planted a small apple orchard behind the bakery, hoping to sell apples and make some extra money. She dreamed of one day buying a new cart to replace the one that was gone. One day, Liam decided to burn some old wooden crates outside his shop. He planned to use the fire to clear space for a new stock of goods. But the wind was strong, and Gwen saw trouble brewing. She ran to Liam's shop, her heart racing. "Don't light that fire," she shouted. "The wind will carry the flames to my bakery. My bread oven is close, and the fire could destroy everything." Liam, however, was not worried. "It's my land, Gwen," he said with a shrug. "I'll do what I want with it." Gwen's fear grew. "Please, Liam, the fire could spread. It could burn down my bakery." But Liam didn't listen. He lit the fire, and soon the flames were higher than expected. Gwen could see the wind pushing the fire toward her bakery. Panic spread through her, and she ran back to her shop, screaming for help. But it was too late. The fire spread quickly, and before anyone could do anything, Gwen's bakery was burning. She watched in horror as the fire consumed everything she had worked so hard for. Her dream was gone in an instant. The fire had destroyed Gwen's bakery, but she didn't give up. She rebuilt her shop from the ground up, though it took a lot of time. While she worked, she planted an apple orchard, hoping to sell apples for extra money. She worked hard every day, caring for the trees, and slowly, her hard work began to pay off. But one evening, when Gwen went to check her orchard, she found that all the apples were gone. The trees, which had been heavy with fruit, were now bare. Gwen couldn't believe it. Who had taken the apples? Later that day, she saw Liam's children playing nearby, laughing and eating apples. Gwen's anger boiled over. She marched over to Liam's house, her fists clenched. "Your children stole my apples," she shouted. "Give them back." Liam looked surprised. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "But if they ate them, I'll pay you for them." Gwen shook her head. "I don't want your money. I want my apples back." Once again, they went to the village judge. The judge listened lazily and then said, "If his children ate the apples, you can take them back. Just cut open their stomachs." Liam was horrified. "You can't do that. They're just children." Gwen, still angry, picked up a knife. "I've had enough of this. First, it was the cart, then the fire, and now the apples. I want justice." The news of Gwen's situation spread quickly through the village. The fire, the broken cart, and now the stolen apples had left Gwen feeling alone and helpless. Everyone in the village knew what had happened, but no one really knew how to help. Gwen felt lost and angry, but she refused to give up. One afternoon, while Gwen was sitting by the ruins of her old bakery, she noticed Mrs. Carter, an elderly woman who had lived in the village for many years. Mrs. Carter was wise and had seen many things in her time. People came to her when they needed advice or when they were in trouble. Mrs. Carter approached Gwen with a kind smile. "I've been hearing about what's been going on," she said gently. "You've been through a lot, Gwen, but I think it's time we have a meeting with the village elders. They need to hear your story." Gwen wasn't sure what the elders could do. She had been to the judge, and nothing had changed. But Mrs. Carter was respected in the village, and if she thought the elders could help, Gwen would trust her. That afternoon, the elders gathered in the village square, under the old oak tree where Gwen and Liam had once sat. The air was calm, and the sky was clear. Gwen stood in front of them, feeling nervous, but determined. Mrs. Carter stood beside her, supporting her. Liam stood on the other side, his face tense. He had been told to come to the meeting, but he didn't seem happy about it. The elders, who were all older and wise, listened carefully as Gwen told them her story. She explained how she had worked so hard to build her bakery, how she had shared the cart with Liam, and how he had destroyed their shared dreams. She told them about the fire and how Liam had not listened to her warnings. She explained about the apples and how they had been stolen by his children. When she finished, the elders turned to Liam. They were quiet for a long time, thinking carefully. Finally, one of the elders, a woman with silver hair named Alice, spoke. "You have been selfish, Liam," Alice said firmly. "You destroyed the cart, burned down Gwen's bakery, and let your children steal her apples. Your actions have caused harm to someone who has always been kind to you." Liam's face turned red. "But I didn't mean to cause so much trouble," he said defensively. "I didn't think the fire would spread. And the apples, I didn't know they were Gwen's." "Your actions were careless," Alice said, shaking her head. "You didn't think about the consequences. Now it's time for you to make things right." The elders turned to Gwen. "You've been wronged, Gwen," Alice said gently. "But we also know that revenge will not heal the hurt. We must find a way to balance things." After a long discussion, the elders decided that Liam should give Gwen half of everything he owned. He would give her half of his shop, half of his land, and even half of his savings. This was the only way to make up for the harm he had caused. Liam looked down, his pride wounded. He had never thought things would go this far. Slowly, he nodded. "I'm sorry, Gwen," he said quietly. "I was greedy, and I didn't think about how my actions affected you. I will give you what you deserve." Gwen looked at him for a long moment. She had every right to be angry, but she had learned that holding on to anger wouldn't help her. She sighed and nodded. "I accept your apology, Liam," she said. "But remember this. You have to be careful with what you do in life. Your choices affect others." With the elders' decision in place, Gwen felt a sense of peace wash over her. She wasn't sure how things would work out, but she was one step closer to rebuilding her life. The village was buzzing with talk about the decision the elders had made. Gwen and Liam's relationship had been strained, but now it seemed that there was a chance for things to get better. Liam kept his word. He gave Gwen half of everything he owned, including a portion of his grocery shop and some of his savings. It wasn't easy for him to part with what he had worked so hard for, but he knew it was the right thing to do. He also helped Gwen repair her bakery, using some of his resources to rebuild what had been lost in the fire. Gwen, in turn, forgave Liam. She knew that he hadn't meant for everything to go wrong, but he had still made mistakes. It wasn't easy to forgive him, but she knew it was the only way forward. As the days passed, Gwen's bakery slowly started to flourish again. With the money from the settlement and the extra resources, she was able to buy a new oven. She was able to bake more bread, more cakes, and more pastries. People in the village noticed, and soon her bakery was as busy as it had been before the fire. She even had enough to hire a helper to assist her. Liam's grocery shop also grew. With Gwen's help, he was able to expand his store even more, and the two of them worked together to make sure their businesses thrived. They didn't argue anymore, and they had learned how to share and help each other. Over time, the village saw a change in both Gwen and Liam. They had both learned valuable lessons from their mistakes. They realized that working together and respecting each other was far more important than selfishly pursuing their own dreams. The village admired their efforts and the way they had turned their problems into a lesson for everyone. Gwen and Liam had shown that even after things went wrong, it was possible to rebuild and move forward. Their friendship was stronger than ever, and they worked side by side, making their dreams a reality. One day, as they sat together under the old oak tree where it all began, Gwen smiled at Liam. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" Liam grinned back. "We sure have. And now we're going to make this village the best it can be." And so Gwen and Liam continued to work hard, helping each other and building their businesses together. They had learned the value of cooperation, forgiveness, and patience, and the village was better for it.